Hello, everyone. This is a special session hosted by MyGov India, and today we are thrilled to have with us Professor Soumitra Dutta, Peter Moores Dean and Professor of Management, Saïd Business School, University of Oxford, and a Fellow of Balliol College, University of Oxford. He is also the author of the fascinating Oxford report titled From Gridlock to Growth, How Leadership Enables India's Pragati Ecosystem to Power Progress. And this report dives deep into Pragati, which stands for Proactive Governance and Timely Implementation, a remarkable initiative launched in 2015 by PM Modi. So, Professor Datta, we are so excited to hear your insights on this incredible journey. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Arti. A pleasure and honor to be invited to share some thoughts. Yes.
So, sir, we'll start with the foundational question. India has witnessed many other transformational initiatives, be it Jan Dhan Yojana or Swach Bharat Mission. And so, what made Pragati stand out as a subject of your study, and what inspired you to focus your research on Pragati?
So, I think, what you see happening around the world now is there are major transformations underway. And it is both in the developed world and in the developing world. So if you look at, for example, the climate transition will require major investments in renewing current infrastructure, in building out new infrastructure. If you look at the energy transition, you have to actually install and create whole new energy systems across the world. Large-scale projects can be both hard infrastructure projects and, very important, soft social infrastructure projects. So when you give examples, the examples you gave before, I think we have to keep in mind that Pragati is a system for how to get leadership of the country, in this case, particularly from the Honorable Prime Minister himself and all chief secretaries and chief bureaucrats inside the country, the architecture of governance, engaged in implementing these kind of large infrastructure projects, both hard infrastructure projects like roads and railways and bridges, and soft infrastructure projects like, for example, the Swach Bharat project.
Right. Sir, you talked about the top leadership of the country, Honorable Prime Minister. I have a follow-up question on that. PM Modi is a leader on a mission mode, I would say, because be it India's digital advancement or, revolutionizing infra or making India as a global hub. His vision is a very future focused. So what are your thoughts on PM Modi's remarkable leadership and with regard to Pragati and its impact on India's transformation?
So I think, what the Prime Minister has realized is that India's growth and the vision of India, Viksit Bharat as a developed economy 2047, will never happen without the investments required in the hard and soft infrastructure of the country. So what the Honorable Prime Minister has been investing in over the last 10 years is really a focused attention on building out the infrastructure. If you look at, for example, just the hard infrastructure in terms of roads, bridges, and ports, and so on, there has been almost a 5-fold increase in investments in India over the last 10 years. Now, the challenge is not just the increase in investment, the challenge actually is making sure that the current investments that are underway were properly and efficiently executed. Because otherwise what you have is you have large-scale projects, a lot of money tied up, and essentially these projects are lying dormant or stagnant for years and sometimes decades. And as a result of that, the development of the whole region or regions of the country gets basically slowed down or gets stopped. I'll give you one example. As a child, I was, for some years, my father, was a medical doctor in the Air Force, and we are posted in northeastern part in Assam in a place called Chorat. And we often went to the Brahmaputra River. And I remember as a child being so impressed by the river, the Brahmaputra River, when it is full, it's flowing, it is like a sight, it's a majestic sight. And the river is a very deep river. It's a very volatile river. It changes directions and then changes course every few years. And of course, in case of flooding, can be actually quite devastating for several regions. Now, this river was considered unbridgeable for many years. And in fact, in 2002, there was a project that was started to build a bridge a bridge that had both road and rail connectivity across the Brahmaputra. But till 2012, almost 10 years, almost no progress taking place. And then what happened was when Prime Minister Modi became Prime Minister himself in 2012, 2014, this was brought under review in the Pragati system. And the attention of the Prime Minister in this case just speeded up the whole process of implementation of this famous bridge across the Brahmaputra. And that bridge was finished in 3 years. I think by 2015, it was 2018, it was finished by that time. But the focus attention, the Prime Minister and the key sort of administrative bureaucrats and leaders across the country helped this project get unblocked. And as a result of that, essentially helped the development of enormous populations of people in Assam and helped connectivity across different parts of Assam.
Right. So you talked about Northeast India, and it's a reality now that Northeast is finally mainstreamed with the nation's development under PM Modi. And like you have talked about many very fascinating projects like Bogibeel and the Barabulla railway link. So these projects were stalled for decades. So now when PM Modi talks about the Viksit Bharat 2047, how do you think India's ambition is not just to catch up in infrastructure? Do you think India is leading into building the global level infrastructure? Because we have superlative infrastructure now, be it the world's highest railway bridge. So any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, you have to keep in mind that these large-scale infrastructure projects are plagued by delays and cost overruns. And this is not an India-specific issue. So if you look at studies done by McKinsey and other global, think tanks and other global organizations, what we find is that 90% plus of all projects, large-scale projects, get delayed and have cost overruns. And the delays and cost overruns are typically 2 times or higher. So really, this is a problem that is endemic. So what really the Pragati system does is twofold. So A, it creates a digital platform, a digital governance platform that allows people to have a common base of information. For example, the Project Management Monitoring Group is a nationwide database of all the big projects in which you have complete details being stored of all the issues being encountered in the various projects. You have issues being raised by both the private sector players involved in the projects, and you also see complete visibility on how the issues are being resolved. So, I have spoken as part of my research to leaders of private sector companies involved in these projects, and they're actually very happy that A, they can raise issues that get attention, and they can see the issues getting resolved sometimes in a matter of days or weeks. And this is of tremendous help. So having a digital governance platform just allows for a common base of information that you can actually use for coordination across different entities. But information alone is not enough. You need people to act on the information. And that's where I think the role of the Prime Minister himself becomes very important, because when the leader of the country is devoting his precious time to looking at the details of projects on a regular basis and getting the whole country's chief secretaries and other kinds of key leaders in the government involved in the process, it creates a momentum. It creates a kind of implicit pressure saying that we have to get together and we have to work together to get these kind of projects executed on time. So it creates a very important Team India concept. And I think that's very important because having information is one thing, but you need people to come together and make trade-offs and common decisions using the information. So I think it's both the human and the data side that is actually brought about in the Pragati system very nicely.
Right. So you talked about Team India, and I've gone through the report, and you very beautifully explained how the Pragati has made federalism stronger, and how PM Modi has gone beyond politics and has collaborated with the state governments and the chief secretaries. Sir, there's one more interesting thing in the report is the middle income trap you're talking about, and you see Pragati as the potential that can break the middle income trap. So for our audience, you can just explain it in a simple language.
Absolutely. So the middle income trap basically, in very simple language, says that countries that are evolving and developing they often get stuck at a rate of a GDP per capita of $10,000 approximately. So that's a sort of a $10,000, $12,000 capita per head. And they often find it difficult to move beyond that and to really reach the developed economy status, which typically implies a per capita GDP of at least $40,000, $50,000 per person. Now, critical in that path is the investment in infrastructure. And essentially, what studies show, including studies with the Reserve Bank of India and other government organizations, is that for every rupee that is invested in infrastructure, you get an increase of about 2.53 rupees, 2.5x to 3x in the GDP growth of the economy. So if India GDP growth has to touch 10 trillion or go beyond that, that requires a proportionate huge investment in infrastructure. So we have to be able to invest in infrastructure and do it efficiently. So if India has to go beyond the middle income level that is currently at, it needs to invest in infrastructure. That's critical because without infrastructure, you cannot get economic output, but it needs to deploy resources doing so efficiently. And the efficiency is very important. And that's where the Pragati system is very important because it helps focus the attention of the country's leadership, including the Prime Minister, to make sure that the translation of resources from input to outputs happens quickly and on time.
Right. Sir, if you have to summarize your report in a single statement that underscores its significance for India's future, what it would be?
I think what it shows is that leadership makes a difference. For me, that's really the key lesson. And here you see the leadership, of course, Pragati system being exhibited by the Prime Minister himself at the scale of large-scale nationwide projects. But guess what? You have many projects happening, both hard infrastructure projects and soft infrastructure projects happening at state levels or city levels. And if you can have this kind of active engagement of the leadership of the country and the willingness of a Team India concept in different parts of the country, I think the country as a whole will move forward so much more faster. And that is important if we actually want to achieve the Viksit Bharat goals of 2047.
Right. Sir, if we move apart from the infrastructure, you have also mentioned how Pragati has helped in social welfare. Right. So we Chandhan, like direct benefit transfer, basically. So how do you think Pragati has played an important role in delivering the benefits to the last mile?
So one thing which we found actually very correct about the way Pragati is being used is that it is also being used to review large-scale social infrastructure projects, what I call the soft infrastructure project, like, for example, the Swach Bharat project. And there's so many important goals that we have in the country for the UN SDG goals, whether education, whether it's health, whether sanitation, whether there's many other different areas of social life. The same challenges arise in social infrastructure projects. So you need to be able to execute on social infrastructure projects also as efficiently as you do on the hard infrastructure project. And the Pragati system is already being used for that and can be used even more in the future because these are all large-scale systemic changes in society and a country as a whole. And large-scale systemic changes require this kind of multiple coordination, common digital governance and digital information, and a leadership from the top that actually drives the entire change process.
Right. Sir, can you just give a one-liner to the essence of the report?
One line with the sense of the report is, as I said, everyone is a leader in his or her own space and can emulate the role set by the Honorable Prime Minister himself.
Correct. Okay. Sir, you have mentioned the 8 toughest projects in the report. If I want to ask you the project which fascinated you the most.
No, there are many projects. Of course, we chose an inductive way of studying the report. So we had, I would say, 2 parts of the analysis. So one was an inductive part where you actually go and look at detail in some projects and try to understand what are lessons from these projects. And the second was a quantitative part, which is much more looking at data and numbers and trying to analyze some, savings and issues resolution patterns. Now, for the inductive part, we chose 8 projects, and we chose 8 based on some distribution across different sectors, across different geographies. And they were not meant to be special in any way. They were meant to be just representative of the different kind of situation that you might actually want to learn from. Because in inductive research, You want different examples of different kind of situations, and you can try and see are there common patterns in these examples. So if you ask a favorite project, of course, there are many of the projects are all very interesting and important for the country. But I must say that, the bridge in the Brahmaputra was something that touched me personally because, I grew up in Assam and at least spent part of my youth out there. Seen the river, I've seen in its full power and strength. And so I can only imagine how important the Bogipul Bridge basically is in terms of, the whole impact on the country, on the region. I haven't seen the bridge myself, but I would love to see it and perhaps cross the river on the bridge this time.
Sure. Sir, this is the last question. What do you think the world can learn from Pragati?
So, as I said earlier, this kinds of delays and cost overruns is endemic. And the problems are serious for both the developing and developed nations. But especially, let's say, for example, the developing South, countries in Latin America, countries in Africa, especially countries in other countries in Asia, perhaps, they face the same problems, exactly the same problems. They're trying to increase their livelihood and quality of life of the people. They're trying to increase the economy. They need to make investment in infrastructure. And looking at what is happening today in the greening of the economy, they need to actually make huge investments in the whole re-greening of the investment of the infrastructure and the economies. So in the face of these large projects, and the face of the traditional delays you have, traditional cost overruns, they need to find ways to reduce that time and cost overruns. They need to find ways to execute successfully in the projects on time and on budget. A lot of people will tell you, looking at projects in the West or in the developed world, that this is not possible. This problem happens even in developed worlds, or this problem is endemic in the system. But what Pragati shows, and this is, I think, where the power of the system is, it shows how you can have a different approach. The World Bank did a study looking at project management of large-scale projects in different countries, and they didn't find a single example of where another country's leader was spending his or her time personally in evaluating projects on a regular basis. Because the leader has, so many of the important global issues to look at and so many of the national issues and, another political issues to resolve that, most leaders don't actually spend the time looking at the details. Why is the bridge getting delayed? Why is the drone data not coordinating with what the people on the ground telling me? And that kind of detail orientation coming from the top, I think shows that leaders from other countries can exhibit the right leadership, but of course, combined with the right kind of digital infrastructure support. I did not talk much about this infrastructure support that we have, but systems like Gati Shakti, which has almost like, several dozens of layers of information, geospatial information, other kinds of information about regulatory constraints and so on, embedded in one platform enables project execution and planning to happen much more efficiently. So India can help other countries create similar geospatial databases, can create similar kind of project monitoring systems like project monitoring group that we have, and can show some examples of leadership that others can follow. And of course, this is a global phenomenon because if you take, for example, the climate phenomena, what happens in Africa affects us in India too, and vice versa. So it is very important for all of us to work together globally and to do it quickly because we don't have that much time.
Right. So while researching, anything that surprised you? Anything
I
you
think
came
what
across?
surprised me was, so we spoke to a number of chief secretaries of various states and secretaries of various ministries and so on. And what surprised me personally was very much this can-do attitude that I saw in Indian government today. I've been interacting in government. I have Indian passport. I'm Indian, so my parents live in India. I come to India very often, and of course, being Indian, you often see a lot of the challenges that India still faces in many ways, and you see some of the progress that other countries have made living outside. And I actually was impressed by the can-do attitude of the Indian government leaders that I met, the chief secretaries, key leaders, secretaries. And that really came, I think, from the inspiration provided by the Prime Minister himself. And I think this can-do Team India kind of approach is very critical for taking the country forward quickly and rapidly. So I think for me, that was the most impressive thing, that people are coming together, unified by a common vision and inspired by a common leadership.
Right. So this is it, sir. And thank you so much for this enlightening session. And I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to you once again, and thank you for your valuable time.
Thank
So,
you very much.
we have seen that we have gone through the strengths of Pragati. We have explored its transformative impact on governance, and we have also seen how Pragati is an integral part of India's success story. So thank you once again, Professor Datta, for your time, your research, and for giving us a deeper understanding of what makes Pragati a remarkable success story. So thank you so much. Thank you, audience, and stay with MyGov India for more such videos. Thank you.
Thank you very much.